Board of Trustees, regular meeting, February 20, 2014. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can sit now, Barb.
Leave me alone. Push it, but I wouldn't.
Well, if you could, call the roll.
I certainly will. Trustee Peters.
Yep.
If you had one of these.
Trustee Novick.
Here.
Trustee Gonzalez.
Here.
Trustee Goldstein. Trustee Kellerman.
Here.
Trustee Bird here. Trustee Elvers.
Here.
We are all here.
Yes. All right, tonight we have a guest who I'm going to bring up right after the approval of minutes, if that's okay with everybody, so he can do his thing. So, the approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of January 16, 2014. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Which one? A second.
January 16.
I did, I second. Yeah, I had a couple of comments. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Under, I'm sorry. Under donations, what was said, donations. Yeah, this is for January 16th.
Yes.
Yes.
Under donations, toward the bottom of that paragraph, Trustee Novick also suggested to keep the list of who gave the donations. That's not what I wanted to say. There's something about that also, the bylaws, but it's the policies that have to be matched to the bylaws. It said match the bylaws to the changes. It's matching the policies that the library has to match the bylaws when it comes to donations.
Oh, instead of it being reviewed by the bylaw committee.
Right. It's by the policy committee, if anything.
So you're changing that the
From bylaw to policy.
that the policy on donations needed to be reviewed by the policy committee.
Right. If I have my glasses, I could really see what it says.
Yeah,
Yeah, it makes sense.
it's a hair splitter, but we understand.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, it's a hair splitter, I agree, but I
Putting it in
think
order.
it's important we realize the difference between the two. I know we had trouble at the beginning, some of us did at least.
So moved.
Anything further?
That's it.
Then I would need,
I will take the roll.
well, we need an approval with the
We need
change. So I need a motion to accept the,
I make a motion to accept the.
with the change, okay, thank you, and a second on that
I'll
one.
second it.
Now, no further discussion, Paul, can call the roll on that one.
Trustee Bird? Yes. Trustee Kellerman?
Yes.
Trustee Goldstein? Trustee Gonzalez?
Yes.
And I'm sure Trustee Novick would approve. Trustee Peters?
Yes.
And Trustee Elvers.
Yes. All right, a special meeting bylaw committee, January 21. A motion to approve?
I have,
I need a
Make a
motion to
motion.
approve, then a second.
I'll second
I need a motion to approve, right?
it.
Was
I
it
thought
Barb?
Barb did it.
Oh.
no, I didn't, well, I can't, doesn't matter.
Okay, Barb did, Kathy second. Discussions?
Attorney, I have a discussion. The part of the revision of the bylaws, I think within that paragraph, nowhere does it mention that Attorney Frank Tennant was asked to provide wording for bylaws about gifts and budget. And I think it should be at least noted that we asked him to work on those two particular bylaws. And then once they were received by me, I would distribute them to everybody, which was done.
So what's the wording that you want different?
You'll see when you get to the bylaws, it's in,
No, for the,
oh, I would just suggest, Lengthy discussion was had concerning numerous updates and revisions to the bylaws. Attorney Tennant was asked to work on a couple following guidelines provided on the budget and on the gifts, following the guidelines suggested by the board. And the rest is correct.
So
I'm
the-
sorry, guys.
No, so the
You gotta learn to
exact
read
wording.
better. I don't know how to read this carefully, so you're really in trouble.
Do you have a sentence, Frank? Mark, that you want?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
So,
Attorney Frank Tennant was asked to work on,
Was asked to
the
provide
donation
wording
policy.
for the bylaws regarding gifts and
Wait.
regarding budget,
okay,
regarding gifts and regarding budget, based upon the suggestions made by the board.
we can't write that there.
Why not? I can read that fast. That's why they don't make me a secretary. There's good reasons. Oh, bad idea. Bad idea.
Attorney Frank Tennant was asked on
And budget.
I've been known to write the minutes before
Was
the
asked
meetings
to
take
provide
place.
wording
wording
on,
on the gifts and the
Gifts
budget.
and budget based on suggestions of the board.
Oh, thank you, Carolina.
You're welcome.
So then I need a motion to approve with that change,
or Barb, why don't you just amend the
Move.
motion?
or amend the motion.
Amend the motion to
I
include-
amend the motion to include the revision discussed.
And then Trustee Peters,
Attorney,
seconds the amendment.
okay, yeah, did you want me to read the sentence, or do you have the sentence?
I mean, I have it.
Oh, okay,
So,
Question is
good.
whether Blanche has it.
So no further
You have it,
discussion
right?
on that one, Paul, could you call?
Trustee Calman,
Yes.
trustee Goldstein,
Yes.
trustee Gonzalez,
Yes.
trustee Noel,
Yes.
trustee Peters,
yes.
See what happens when they
Trustee
let me out of my
Elbers.
cage.
Yes.
trustee Burke, yes.
All right, we have 3 special meetings regarding the director's search, open and closed sessions, January 31, Feb. 6, and Feb. 13.
The only change I would like to make is to put me under trustees present and strike the attended, well, actually, you could just say trustee Peters attended by a Skype, period. Because I did participate in the votes, and Illinois law.
Here, short story.
Short story.
So Kathy was there on medical leave, which wasn't clear to everybody. So if you're away on medical leave, the state does give you the ability to call in your vote via Skype. So we didn't count her vote because we didn't know she was really away on medical leave. So if the board concurs it's okay, she was away on medical leave, we can just count her vote and amend the minutes, and it doesn't change anything, it'd just be a 7 vote for yes.
I could be obnoxious and ask what qualifies as medical leave.
Okay, I will be happy to tell you.
I don't want a dissertation.
No,
One
it won't
sentence
be a
or less.
dissertation, it won't be a dissertation. The day before the last board meeting, I asked Mark if I should bring in a medical note, because I was getting my legs injected that day in
Okay.
order to cover that. I have reflex sympathetic
That's
dystrophy,
fine.
and that's why
That's
I was
all I
down
need.
there.
You had a note, that's all.
So if you guys are okay with that, we'll amend the one to say that Kathy voted.
Because it doesn't change the vote anyway.
No,
No.
it makes it 7-0.
So what changes do you want to what one?
All I wanted is trustee Peters attended via Skype
Which date?
on January 31st, drop the last half of that sentence, and then under roll call vote, stick me at the bottom, Peters, yes. And then the vote would be 7-0.
But then it also has to be changed on the 6th.
Yes.
Was there a
Well,
motion
all
to
of
approve? Was there a motion
No,
to
there
approve?
wasn't, no. There was not. So I need a motion to approve.
I would like to make a motion to approve those changes regarding trustee Peters voting. Can I extend it to the February meetings, or do we have to do motions on those?
So we need a motion to
Why don't you just do a blanket?
Can we do?
We do a blanket motion,
Blanket
right.
motion, yes, to change all of trustee Peters' wording to say that she attended via Skype and period there, and just list at the bottom approved 7-0.
And I voted
Peters,
yes on, yes on all of the votes, I voted yes.
Clear as mud, friend.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
No, there was not a second.
Oh, I'll second.
A second.
Who first did it?
You did.
I did. Sorry, it's my motion.
Carla seconded it.
Oh, you're in worse shape than I am, I can tell.
Too much rain and too much snow.
All right, so no further discussion, then do we need to amend the motion?
No, he.
So he motioned with
He
the
motioned it
changes.
with the changes in it.
Fine, so that there's no further discussions, Paul, if you could call that vote.
Okay, trustee Elders,
Yes.
trustee Byrd, yes, trustee Kelman,
Yes.
trustee Goldstein, trustee Gonzalez,
Yes.
trustee Novick,
Yes.
and trustee Peters.
Yes.
All right, any public comments on agenda items? No public here tonight, so we're gonna move it around a bit. I'd like to introduce Rick McCarthy down at the end of the table here. And now, I don't wanna steal any of your thunder, but I guess he specializes in building repurposing. So he offered to come here and talk to us about how to reconfigure rooms and
Good word.
libraries in particular. So he's going to explain to us how that process would work, should we dive into it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for letting me come and talk to you tonight. Listen, got the chance to have a really exciting drive from Elgin. That's all right. It's like when you specialize in one building type, you do a lot of driving. And so that's just how it is.
You attract people from the Fox family.
It's because you're so attractive, right?
And get that, we all can watch.
Just what screen is included. Anyways, as Mark said, I do a lot of building repurposing. I'm a library architect. I've been an architect, library architect for 20-something years. And it's been a really exciting thing to do, and it's getting actually more exciting all the time. And I just was going to show you some, what a lot of people are doing these days, and just for some thoughts about as you start getting into a project or eventually a potential project, just some things that you might want to think about and such. So, a library architect, as I said, I'm also president of the board of Elgin Library, Elgin Gale Board Library in Elgin. I've been a trustee there for 20 years. And when you come to Elgin and you ask people what the best thing in town is, everybody says the library.
Not the riverboat.
Nope, not the riverboat. They say the library. And they say that, and it's not because of how many books we have. It's about the stuff that happens in the building. And we've won lots of national awards and stuff, and it's a really exciting place. And that's the kind of bar when I work with a client that I like to set. That this can be a really, every library can be a really great place that makes some really great changes in people's lives. And especially now, we're at a stage where libraries are having to reimagine what they do, and it's changing so fast. And if you don't get in libraries all the time in different places, you won't necessarily be aware of it. But they're reinventing themselves all over the world essentially, and that's really kind of what I'm involved with a lot these days. And it's not about square footage and how of interior decorating. It's really about how we're going to serve the people of the community for the next generation. That's what that's what we're really looking at. And I don't know if anybody here has been involved in a library construction project. I've worked on this building a couple of times over the years. I don't know if there's any board members here now that were here last time I worked here or not, but it's really changing. For a long time, when you were planning libraries, you would go to the state standards and serving our public standards, and you'd look up the population, and some of these are from different libraries, so if this all match yours, don't get excited about that. You look up the population and you say, well, we need this many books, this many computers, this many chairs and such. And I worked with libraries all over the place that had building statements or whatever needs statements that were based on this, and I started to realize that they were just arbitrary, had no basis in real life anymore and what was happening. And so I decided, make no small plans. I was going to reinvent the way we plan for what libraries, how they determine how they're gonna serve their communities. So the first thing that I started getting into was do a peer comparison and see how it compared to the neighbors. And I wouldn't say, we don't want to just judge ourselves by the neighbors, because ideally we want to be better than all the neighbors. I'll just keep plugging along here. Better than the neighbors, but it's still interesting to see a peer comparison. So I did one for you guys, and you're the bottom line each one of these, not bottom because you're worse, just so you can easily see where it is. So red is bad or worse, green is better, and it's looking, and then some things are doing, okay. And these are all traditional measures. These aren't the new things that libraries are doing. A few things jump out at me. Your circulation turnover, how many times the average book in the library moves per year gets used, is lower than it should be. It's a little bit over 2, and at least it was when this data was collected. I'd like to see it up closer to 4. And what that means, if it's lower, like some number like 2, it means that the collection could be hard to use, it hasn't been weeded, or it's not really up to date with what people are looking at. There's other reasons too, but those are the big ones that you tend to see. And what it means is you're not serving people as well as you could be in certain ways there. And things like this children's circulation, things like that, there are other things that were kind of low there. I decided the other thing I was going to do, as opposed to just using a standard, was really look at every community I was working in and see what the demographic components of that community was, because the standards don't take any of that stuff into account whatsoever. So, just looking at, this is what I just did for Berwyn the other day, looking at educational attainment, because that has can have a big component with how we design a library, where you're starting at the average educational level in the community. Like, how much does continuing education opportunities have an impact on what the library design should be or what we provide? Looking at education, looking at the age distribution, that's Wheaton, which is, I haven't checked yours yet, but I'm going to guess that you're probably kind of like Wheaton, maybe a little bit older. But Wheaton was a lot of young professionals in that town, and that's what we're looking at. In their case, how can we better serve this young professional group? Language is spoken at home. And that one I did was for Berwyn, which you can see is a big, but even here, I looked up your number that you get, and speak English lesson very well. I was kind of surprised. You're just about 20% of your population here speaks English lesson very well. And there's things that a library can do, design-wise, to better serve people who are not native English speakers, who are being absorbed in a new culture and such. So it's something. It's a good thing to know. Oh, income. This is you guys here. I think probably everybody kind of a good income community. And to me, this has a lot to do with what is the mix of books and computers and other things in the library. We take the income into account, because it's a different, like I said, working in Berwyn too, a completely different world there as far as income and distribution and such. And that to me means like how many computers are we going to give and the kind of opportunities to people. So anyway, so that's you guys. And the other thing I've just started to do, and I don't know, I've never actually seen this done before, is look at the age range of population in town versus the age range of people who have cards. So we can kind of see who we're serving and who we're not serving. And these were done, I didn't do it one for you because it takes a while for me to get this figured out. These were done for Berwyn, I think. Yeah, this was Berwyn. And it was interesting, you can see a certain age, 10 to 14, 15, 19, they were doing really well. But there was a real fall off at like 25 years old where they didn't have cards. And I thought, why don't they have cards, and what should we be doing differently to get to serve them? And I thought, well, let's get a bigger look at this. This was Berwyn here, the blue line, compared to the United States average, the average age of cardholders, and it had stood up. They were doing pretty well. This is all the data I could really get. But at about 25, the number of people who had cards in Berwyn was going down. So like there's something there that they're not doing right, that they need to be doing better. And this is the kind of thing I think it's important to start looking at. And by the way, as an architect, I decided, this may not be as sexy as beautiful interior shots of libraries, but I thought I want to know more about libraries and the real guts of how they work than any other architect does. And so I thought I'm going to get back to the data and look at this stuff. So when I look at a library, the books are going to be there, but these are the kinds of things that we're looking at now, that with the services that we're providing. It's the continuing ed, depending on the educational level of the community, co-working job searches, partnerships with schools, English as a second language, And I put fewer venues for group interaction. Now, you guys, because you have the auditorium here, you have a really great spot there that a lot of libraries don't have of that caliber. So I think that's great. But I think one thing you might be missing really is more space for informal interactions, because that's a very formal thing. A show gets put on, you know, but informal interactions. And one of the things I like to show is, I didn't bring it with me tonight, I guess I should have. I have a 1912 Elgin City Directory, you know, it tells what everybody in town did and everything. The first 8 or 10 pages of it is all the organizations that existed in Elgin in 1912. And there's like 110 of them. I mean, things, some of which you've heard, like elk and moose and stuff, but there's ones that you probably have never heard about. It just goes on page after page after page. All those were places that people got together and did things as groups. And almost all those things are gone now. And the library is starting to be able to be the place that we can host events and such like that like those organizations used to, and let technology bring people together rather than split them up and all be home watching their televisions. So anyway, these are the things that we're starting to look at now. And really starting to target in a big way the different user groups. And I think that, you know, there's two that I think are vitally important. One is the children. They're also vitally important because they're really fun to design for. That's my favorite part of the library, to give them colors that resonate with them, scale of things to resonate with them. Like that's in LaGrange, and that was the entry to the children's activity room. And it's nice and fun colors, but that door is actually like this tall. So when the kids walk in there, it makes a statement to them without any signs or anything that this is a space for you to come in. There's a grown-up door on the corner that they go in, you know. But this says to the kids, this is your space. And the kids love it. And things like, you know, what can we do? I think it's really important to do, you know, what can we do to promote family reading opportunities with, you know, give the venues for parents and their kids to get together. And actually we're looking now at expanding that. I was just talking today with Rockford Public Library, and one of the things we're talking about there is actually getting all the foreign language books. All the kids' books are separated now than the adult books. We thought, well, let's get all the foreign language and put them together in one spot, so the Lithuanian immigrant there can sit down with her kids and have all the Lithuanian books right there and read to the kid and have it all right there. And it sounds like a small thing, but it's connecting the parents more with the kids, what it's doing. Anyway, it's really fun to design children's libraries, and sometimes you get the chance to do some big, nice, iconic image that they remember. You know, they say, you know, Mom, take me back to the big book. Now, that was like 10 years ago. I don't know if I was going to do it now, if I would do the same thing with the big book there or not. I mean, because it's different now. I don't know what it would be now. Well, you know, I mean, it might be an iPad or something. I don't know. You know, it's but anyway, it's interesting. I love designing children's libraries, but you just see the vibrant and colorful and fun things happening in it. This is the group that's tough to deal with right here. You know, there's a central rule for teen, when you design for teens, is that they don't want to be with the kids. They don't want to be with the adults. They want to feel like they have some privacy, but we don't really want to give them any privacy. And so if we balance all these things together, we can come up with a kind of a successful teen experience. And it can be kind of a scary group to deal with sometimes in terms of running a library and such. But I think that this group is as important, maybe the most important group of all that we're dealing with now, because you know, when I show you those curves of when they lose the library loses people, you know, at 20 years old or whatever, it's because we're starting to lose them here. So teens growing up now have a different level of sophistication than I had, certainly, and then a lot of us, you know, this is what their image of, you know, what they want. It's like the Apple Store, give me an Apple Store. And so that's kind of setting the bar for what we're doing for, you know, designing for teens. And if we look at the principles that we're designing about for them, they travel in packs. That's just how teens are. You know, they want things on their iPad, they want digital media, they're used to connectivity all the time. And I'm going to say that if we want to be relevant, we need to supply all these things and continue to supply it, because that scary-looking teenager that we saw a second ago, in 10 years is going to be a scary-looking young adult with a scary-looking kid of his own. And all these expectations that they have for library service are not gonna go away when he becomes an adult. This is setting the bar for the future, and that we have to do this if we're gonna be relevant as an institution in the future. So I think for that reason, they are really a really important group to, because they're really defining where we're going. And I've led several different design, library design studios. My last one, we did the teen area for Schaumburg Library. And of course, Schaumburg's paid a lot of money, we know that. But the thing is, there were lots of things for working together, teen creation spaces, things where they could do videos together and music and video green screen and stuff. And this is the kind of thing that is really getting them excited about going to the library, which is what my goal does. So anyways, looking at the data about, like, how do we set the goals and what we're going to be designing for here, is I thought I'm going to go back and look at why people actually come to libraries. So the Pew Trust does lots of great studies. There's lots of great data out there, and I looked at their data for it. What I found out, a couple things. One, I think we probably all know this, that the increase in book collection size is pretty much leveled out for libraries. It's not good, it's not bad, that's just what it is. But the other thing I thought was interesting is that, and this kind of surprised me, is that only a little bit more than a third of the people that come to libraries now are coming to check out books. Again, it's not good, bad, it's just what the data is. And so all the old library standards presuppose that checking out books is the thing that people do in libraries. And I'm saying, hey, we gotta look at what people really want. So that graphic actually gave me an idea for the whole way that I personally approach library design now, in that people come, I think, to the library for three things. They come to consume all their traditional library services are in the consume part. That's taking out books, doing reference questions, all the stuff that most of us grew up with doing at the library. More recently, the last decade or so, the connecting with other people part is happening. You started to see people go at libraries routinely have coffee shops, and that's kind of informal social spaces, because people are coming there just like for a Starbucks to see other people. And most recently, in the last 5-6 years, we're seeing people come to create things. So we're building lots of digital labs and things like that. And I think the difference now is that when you look at what library should be, that all these things should be in kind of equal balance. It used to be that we had the book-based, it was based on the collection, and these other uses were kind of tacked onto it later. I think now they have to be taken to be as important as the book collection itself. Like I said, to be relevant with what libraries are doing. And so if you look at some of the things that happen in there, some of what you've got doing a great job here, you've got the facilities, some you don't have, and which is typical for a library of a certain age, actually. But there's a lot of opportunities for other things that could happen. And in the Connect part especially, spaces for small group meeting rooms, we put those in libraries now, and they get used all the time.
They get used all the time by
people coming in for tutoring, the English as a second language, a small business, especially a small business, people come in and get the space so they can meet with other small business people. I mean, it's just constant. And you talk to libraries, and that's one of the things that they have the biggest call for, is small group, like 4-person meeting rooms, 6-person rooms, that kind of thing. So anyway, and all these things have, different aspects on how the building's going to be designed and what's in the interior of the building should be. And so when I come to the library, it hasn't changed for a long time. My gears are already going like, how can we meet some of these needs within the context of an existing building?
Are libraries using that then as a revenue generating opportunity for the library?
Some of them are, but I mean, I'd say seldom. Occasionally you'll see it for, if it's a business that wants to rent something, sometimes they will charge rent, but it gets to be kind of a shade of gray thing that's kind of hard to tell sometimes. Like there's some people tutor for free, some people charge for tutoring, and it can be kind of for the administration kind of a hard thing sometimes. We have to start quizzing people exactly, like, are you charging for this one? Or it gets great, but there are some that charge for these things, but most often not. So it's possible, it is possible to do it. Is the answer. So these days, I think in all the buildings I'm doing, we're looking at areas where we're providing equipment for people to do more higher end computer graphics. It could be teenagers who are working on stuff in high school and such and don't have any of this stuff at home, and they come to the library to get access to it. And if you got the square footage, video creation, Elgin and a couple libraries I'm working on right now, doing little small music studios, electronic keyboards, things like that, that people can come in and do that and get recordings. And and nobody's fooling themselves that this is a professional recording studio, but it's giving people the opportunity to get access to something they wouldn't have otherwise, which is really what libraries are about. We're also looking at designing for collaborative effort. The modern workplace is increasingly collaborative, people working together, sometimes at distance, sometimes together, and looking at how that plays out. Here's a classic example of a piece of furniture that's made for a group of people to work together on a single screen. And probably I put one of those in almost every library I'm working on now. And it plays out also in the way that the staff interacts with people now. This is the model that we're using now, things like this for the reference desk. Instead of having a desk where you come and there's a reference librarian there, you've got to approach and ask a question. Case like this, you're sitting down next to the reference librarian, but most importantly, as he or she is working on the screen there, you can see how they're doing the search. Because I think it is just as important to see how they found the information as to what the information is, because that's what lets you do it next time on your own. Makes it a double learning opportunity. And I think I got probably 3 libraries right now. We're doing special craft areas. Which this one was from Elgin. I disagreed. The staff asked me to put one in. I thought it was in the teen area. I thought that's for kids. They're not going to use it. It gets used all the time. It's amazing. I was absolutely wrong, and I've been forced to tell them so several times. But the other part, like we're talking about maker spaces, is the 3D printers starting to get. And I think, all things in modern society, the trends, 3D printing is where computer programming and manual arts kind of cross. And if there's one thing that kind of symbolizes our future workspace, and I think America, where we're going, that does. Mm-hmm. And giving people the opportunity to learn how to use something like this. In school people are getting them now, but for people who aren't in like a junior college or something, you don't get
They're prevalent in business.
Yeah.
Printers.
And they're just, and so now, and it plays out even through, how libraries are hiring staff now. They're hiring people who know how to use, which wouldn't have been the case a while back. But anyway, again, it's giving people access to something that they may not be able to get, and kind of stretching the definition of what libraries are. So I've been coming back actually to lots of libraries I worked with over the last decade and talking about, hey, things have changed a lot since then. And I was just at Wheaton the other day, and the first thing I noticed was we had all these huge set circulation desks and reference desk and information desk. It's like now we're getting rid of all that. It's a much more, not that there's no desks at all, but we're really designing it that there's a much more interactive experience between patron and staff there, which is sometimes hard for staff because that wasn't the way they were raised professionally. But it's kind of the direction that we've been going.
I have a question
Sure.
about the teens. Do you do any research into what kinds of things may be available in their high schools so that we don't do anything that's redundantly, expensive / redundant?
Well, I think, that would be a question probably we would want to ask on every project. But the other thing is, you've got to remember, there's people who aren't in high school who might want to get access to the same thing, but they can't go to the high school. You get somebody who's 23 and not in high school. So there's different ways to think about it. But I think to your point, I think it does merit finding out what's prevalent, because some high schools are really strong at certain things. But I'm not sure that doesn't mean we don't want to put it in there, because if people are getting exposed to it in high school, they may want to use it more, but outside the class context. So, you just have to think of what that means,
Excuse me, are you contemplating doing this in the present space or in a new library?
Oh, for this building?
Yes.
Oh, not contemplating anything yet. I mean, I'm just saying these are the things I'm doing all over the place in libraries. And, this building has a lot of limitations. I mean, I think everybody knows that it could be doing a lot of things different, a lot of things better, like any building could, I think, with some thought. So really, I think the thing to do would be to do with the new rules of library design, which are really different than the last time this building was looked at in that sense. What could be done within the existing context? And then everybody would see, is it worth doing?
There's a major problem here, as you probably know. There's a lack of electric,
Oh, yeah.
can't do most of
Yeah,
this.
every building this age, well, no, that's not true, because I mean, a lot of buildings, you know, when we're remodeling, we are trenching the floors and putting in new power outlets all over the place. And yeah, it's invasive and it costs something, but if you're gonna be, I mean, as a board president myself, I would say, hey, we gotta do something like that, because people need it, you know, otherwise we're having space that's not being used. So, but yeah, you're right, it's got, this building has limitations of ceiling height, it's got mechanical limitations, it's got,
Contamination.
yeah, the asbestos around and other things like that. You know, those aren't the end of the world, they can be dealt with, but you'd like to deal with them while you're doing something else. You know, rather than disrupt things twice. If you had like an asbestos remediation project, piggyback it on something else you're doing, so you don't have to, but it's not a reason not to do it. I mean, it's stuff that's gotta be, it wants to be attended to, because, you know, not much has happened here for a long time. So it's really, you know, right, I think, for an update. So anyway, the community, what can we provide? It's funny, one of the biggest assets for a library now is actually open space. Space that can be changed to be different things, different events to happen in the library. And so we're looking at a lot of libraries, like how can we clear out some space here and give, so we got a flexible space for different things to happen. And at Wheaton too, I was walking through the director and I thought, this is like, this is so symbolic of the old image of the library. We were walking and I was taking pictures of these as we were walking, and she was a new director. She had, the old one retired, had been there for like 40 years or something. And she's looking at that. I showed her all the collection of these pictures, and so the first thing she just sent a staff member out and say, take down every picture that has a negative, you know, a negative connotation here. So, because that's how it used to be, but it's not the way we're aiming at now. I know it's pretty funny. I like the kids area, like, no, you know, keep your shoes on, don't jump, quiet activity area. This is like 7-year-olds, so quiet activity area, who are they trying to kid, you know? It's,
Doesn't make sense.
yeah, I know. So, a lot of libraries, you know, this age, it's funny, they tend to look about the same. You know, they have kind of the same colors, they got the same wood in them and stuff. And, you know, and one of the things we're doing a lot of is just, you know, in the context of other upgrades, just brightening them up and making them happier places to be, and more, you know, visually interesting experiences and different colors and such. So, and also, get to your comment about the electrical outlets, giving access to technology everywhere. One of the things I'm doing now is I'm doing way fewer built-in computer stations. In fact, we're cutting way back on those and going to tablets and laptops. Because every one of these, especially if you were going to stay in this building and your space challenged, you got to think of how can every square foot be used flexibly for different things. That square footage is only one thing. It's a computer spot, and that's it. When we go to laptops and tablets and just check them out, just like books, any seat in the library can be a computer station, and therefore we can get rid of 2/3 of these things and just keep a few for the people who need to stretch out. Other things. Also, looking at things like RFID, so we can go to self-service. My library now, I think we made the transition to RFID, and the new ones now are just great. So now, if you guys have ever used a good RFID system, but you know, you get a stack of 10 books, you put it in the counter, and they're all checked out. And especially that's great with kids' books, where parents come and check like 30 books out at a time. It's just instant, and the staff does. What it does is it lets the staff spend their time on higher level customer service as opposed to just moving books back and forth. Like staffing is your biggest expense, right there. So it's like you want to get the best kind of interaction, good service out of every staff member. And that's not onerous for staff, it's better, it's more fun for the staff to do better service in this case. So we're looking all over, every library I'm working in, we're looking at getting the teen services really energizing. I'm energizing the children's services a lot. And looking at how we can get more flexible space there for things to happen. And if I had to put a list together of the adjectives that I would like to see in libraries that I work on, that would be the list right there. So,
At the beginning, you referred to at 28, at the age of 25, the drop-off was very significant. You're talking about teens, you're talking about children.
right.
What do we talk about for adults?
Yeah, well, actually, that's a good question. I think there's a few different things. One of the things that I'm looking at actually ties in with the children's space, because one of that age group also tends to overlap with young parents. And so what occurred to me one day was that we need to design children's libraries more around parents when we're doing it. So what I'm starting to do is look at, call it like a parent zone or a parents central parent zone, and having a central space for parents to come where the kids' spaces radiate around it, so they can have kids of different ages at the same time in the library. There's a place for the parents to visit with other parents, have coffee, have a couple parenting magazines right there, and the kids are around, maybe, and a place to give kids snacks, because kids need fueling all the time. And just by doing something like that, we can encourage young parents to come in more often with their kids, and that will be part of that group. And I think part of it too is they're busy, so probably that's always going to go down at that level. But some of it gets into just how you run the library with collection development too. And
Well, I mean, I would see an area that would be a return to the library around 55, 60, 65, where
Right.
people are retiring, and yet they're too young to be.
yeah.
I would think that would be an area that there would be,
Yeah.
you would want to look for a way to increase.
I think I'll show you something. I got about 3 more pictures here, and I'll show you some way we're doing it at another library. I think it would be. And so, I think, we've been lucky in my library. We're big enough that we have the square footage to do bigger events than you guys. We don't have. You have a nice auditorium here, so that's kind of a different thing. But it occurred to me that what we really are about is changing lives. And in Elgin, our entry area, we oversized it on purpose so we could have big exhibits come in. And so, we've had, local history things, a Lincoln exhibit, a dinosaur exhibit, there's the bottom half of them right there, the space exhibit. But if there was one moment that occurred to me that, this is what libraries are about now, it was during the space exhibit. One Saturday, the staff managed to get a couple of astronauts to come to the library during the space exhibit, meet local kids, and do a presentation and talk to the kids. And during the presentation, on how they did this, they arranged a radio link with the space station. And when the space station came over, the kids in Elgin got to talk to the astronauts on the space station as it went over there. And I thought, that young man's life is going to be changed by the fact that he was able to do something like this. And not every library can do the same scale thing, but we can do the same kind of thing. And so that's what we really are about, is changing lives. And it's reinventing what we do, but it is about changing lives. And it was just a seminal moment for me in the design of libraries and what we're about. So I've got just a couple of recent transformations I've done with various teams. This was down. I think this was down in White Oak Library District. So when we came in, it was kind of, newer than this building, but really cleaning it up and now most of the desk there is actually self-service. It's RFID. The old meeting rooms that they had, cleaning them up and making them much more transparent, partially for safety reasons, so you can kind of keep track of what's going on. But this is an example of all small group meeting rooms that get used all the time. That was the children's library, just again updating it, getting fun colors, more light into the place. Teen area. And that building suffered from some of the same problems you have, like low ceilings and such, that can be hard to work, not your central area, but your other areas. In that case, we took out the low ceilings, painted the structure above it black so it wasn't quite so oppressive. It just had ceilings in certain areas where we needed to define spaces. And it gave that kind of a edgy thing that the teens, that, you know, appeals to the teens there. And even something as simple as a children's activity room, that's where the start and finish one there. Just a different, you know, a different kind of look. Did kind of the same transformation. This was Alsip Library, there's the before. And I did not put an orange filter on the camera. It looks like I did here, but the building was, you know, early 70s, orange and dirty. and so that's, you can see the before and the after. And it's just a complete change in the way it feels and the way that people are using it. And I think if we do this right with the library, you know, we're basically doing three things. We're inspiring people to read. The books are still going to be there. We're sharing resources, and whether that resource is a book or a 3D printer, same thing to me. It's sharing something that you might that you don't have at home, and we're connecting people one way or another. And
Things are changing very fast.
mhm.
How do you build for the future?
Well, outlets, lots of really a couple of, I mean, that's because flexibility is really the byword now. And the way that I like to approach, or at least one of the ways I like to approach it, is the more things that can be plugged in as opposed to built in. Okay, so the fewest walls we can put in a place, the better, because, you know, and define space with furniture and things like that. So yeah, because, you know, the crystal ball only goes for a few years, and then, like, who, you know, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have known what a 3D printer was 15 years ago, but I would not certainly not have predicted we'd be putting them in all our libraries. And but you're right, it's so less built-in stuff and more a really strong, robust technology backbone that can accommodate changes. The other thing here too is, you know, what this building urgently needs is energy upgrades too, for like the lighting and things like that. We're working with a lot of libraries with grant money now too. Actually, I have two jobs to the street today, in fact, for relighting with LED lighting, and that's nice to do with part of a bigger project, so you can have a real long-term plan there. So what I'm doing a lot with libraries is doing kind of a revisioning process, like what are our goals going to be, what kind of general direction. It's not really a design yet, but it just like sets the direction they want to go. And once everybody gets on board, after that we start looking at real design things, like what can we bring out of this building and what can it really do for us. And like I say, you know, we all know that there are some built-in problems here with some of the infrastructure, but that doesn't mean you can't get something nice out of the building, but it's just, you got to work with what you got.
Are you also downsizing staff spacing, so to free up some of that space if you're gonna have your people rove around more and you
Yeah.
have as many fixed?
Yeah, one of the things we're looking at is like fewer offices for staff and having hoteling. Like if you have two part-time staff, they share a workspace on different hours and things like that. So we're trying to, you know, we're trying to get less square footage dedicated to. That being said, a happy staff makes a good library. So we don't want to shrink them to a look at, because we want, if they have a good attitude, it reflects on service. So yeah, we can make it more efficient, but it's a real balance on how to do it, because we want people who like coming to work, because then the patrons like coming to the library. But yeah, it can be it can be made more efficient. And things like RFID and such too, where it's, you know, we're removing a lot of rote work that takes up square footage for people to do. So those kind of solutions can help a lot too. But, you know, there's tons, you know, I don't know, you know, what the long-term plan here, maybe nobody really knows what it is, you know, is it stay in this library for sure, or is it open to anything else? But whatever, there are lots of options for making it really improving your service, even within the existing structure, you know. And I think it's time, because the library world is kind of moving fast, and like I said, as a library board president, I mean, I feel my job is to provide relevant service to the people in town, and that's what I'm kind of about these days. So anyway, that's the kind of things we're looking at. And any other questions or comments? I mean, does this?
If we were to contract for this type of service with somebody, not to keep you forever, what's the process?
I think the first thing to do is, just before there's any contract at all, probably just sit down for a meeting and say, what are our immediate goals? What do we want to do? And like I just.
Is that a staff or a board projection, or is that between the two?
I would say between the two.
All right.
The board needs to take the lead. If it's the vision, I mean, that's what you guys are there for, is.
We're known for being visionaries.
Yeah, so I know. That's why I drove in the rain all night to get here. But you know, I think it would be sitting down with, you know, director and one or two board members and saying, well, what are our immediate goals? Like, is it, you know, is it a sure thing that we want to stay here and then that study can be focused to that, or do we need to find out, should we stay here or not stay here, or whatever? If I were a board member, that's the kind of things that I would want to look at. And then just talk about what's important in the community to study. And then based on that conversation, we'd come up with, here's the stuff we need to have done.
So we would want to have a community needs assessment first before we do this?
I would put it as part of this.
Okay.
Because it's a funny thing, because a lot of libraries come and do the community assessments, and they have these community meetings and ask people what they want. The problem is, people don't know what's on the menu. You say, what do you want in your new library? And you'll get a bigger version of what you already have, because most people don't know what's there. So I'm thinking in the needs assessment part is an opportunity for leadership that hasn't really been taken enough, because for years, I've seen library consultants come into these community sessions, and they come back to talk to all the staff members. Well, what do you want? Well, I want 3 more shelves of this, and they get this. Instead of getting a broad vision of where the library goes, they get this whole series of little myopic views.
Yeah, what I want in my area.
Yeah, and I think you got to step back if you're going to really address it. Take a little bit of horns, step back, and say, here's what's happening in a larger global context with these things, and provide leadership.
It's kind of the old story, your mother, when you can't spell a word, your mother says, go look it up in the dictionary.
Yeah, right.
And the answer is, I can't look it up.
Because I don't know how to spell it. Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what the potential is for a library.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody really does that well.
Right.
And I think that's part of the problem, so.
Yeah.
Don't you
Scope
think
of,
staff is so immersed in their library that they would know more?
No, I don't. I'll tell you why. I tell you why, and this is not to dismiss staff at all, but I've worked with staff all over the place. And when that happens, you know, you get people who've done a job, and this is not particular libraries, this is for anything, who've done a job for 30 years in a place, and they imagine doing their job maybe a little bit differently, and it's a very unusual staff member who can take that bigger view. It really is. And that's not to, like I said, it's not to dismiss staff and say, it takes a great designer or planner to come in and do it. But the really, I think, is a better way. The staff, I always talk to the staff, and we go over, I would never propose coming and shoving stuff down people's throats and stuff. But, you know, you'll have people that just are, in any institution, that are resistant to change. And I would think in libraries now, things are changing so fast, you sometimes have to kind of blow past that, because if you're going to give relevant service. But that being said, the staff get involved with it, but it's not all about asking the staff, is what my answer would be.
Considering the exponential change in the library just over a few years, if you would have put pen to paper 5 years ago, you'd end up with a much different building than you would today. How do you know how do you know when to take that snapshot to say, okay, here, we're gonna go from here? Or B, with that in mind, do you design with enough flexibility so that no matter which direction it goes, you're not gonna fall off the edges?
That's what you hope, that's what you try to do. And because, like I said, you don't know exactly really what's going to happen. Like, I have some general ideas where the trends I think are going, but if we make it flexible, that building can really roll with the punches. That's the best we can ever do, honestly. You know.
so the scope of what you do would be, say, small, medium, large size projects within this building, or is it a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year?
Well, the first thing that I typically do is kind of independent of the size of it, is saying this is the vision for what we want to be. And that's the first step, but then the second step is there's different versions of how we can achieve parts or all of this vision, and that's where you come into some more of actual design. So the visioning part is a little bit more amorphous, but it's really just to choose the direction before you choose the destination, you know?
Okay, so we have a new director to be coming on board in another month or so. So we would want to sit with her
I
after
think
she gets her feet on the ground.
That's perfect. That's perfect timing
Yeah.
to do it, because that's, you know, yeah, and it's good because you're not getting somebody that's full of preconceptions with the way the place has been run. And I'm not just saying the way it's been run or anything, but you know, libraries are changing.
New broom.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so that's the perfect time to do that. And everybody will be a little bit more psychologically prepared for change too, because they know
Oh, yeah.
that's happening, you know, so. Yeah, I would have never thought, you know, when you go to school and you learn to be something, I would never have thought that as an architect I would be getting so involved in change management. But now, I mean, a lot of my job is really helping staffs and helping people deal, you know, coming up with positive results at dealing with all the changes that are happening.
You have to go back to the way they train people. The doctor's not trained to talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
The architect's not trained to listen to people.
Yeah, and if you're lucky, you pick that stuff up. If you're not lucky, you.
You know, and you see it in all professions.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't get the other courses that would make them
Mm-hmm.
a more rounded person.
Yeah.
This last year particularly, our library has changed quite a bit, its
Mhm.
layout
Mm-hmm.
particularly.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought everything was done favorably.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's going, you know, there's things that are the right direction. You know, I think this, especially the new director though, that it's a time, it's a good time to step back and take that big look. And instead of just the little incremental looks. And you know, who knows where it goes. I mean, nowhere, maybe it comes up with a new vision for it or whatever, but anyway, it's perfect timing for the director change. And I mean, so what I do typically, this is just a draft, not done yet, this was one I just happened to have in my briefcase, you know, with, this one was for Whitewater. So discussing some of the things here, because when I produce one of these things, I always think, like, I don't know who's gonna be the audience for this. You know, if the board will know more, because they've been involved with it, but the newspapers will eventually see it, the people who are for the project will see it, people who are against the project will see it, and you just have to have a document that kind of shows this is why we're doing these things. And then now, as I was showing you, I'm trying to really back it up with demographics, and so we can actually show some reasons for it.
So your proposal would basically cover a needs assessment
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
having to, because you could visualize what could be done better than a needs assessment would only be asking questions that people can't answer.
Right, well, that's what I'd like to, and so, in one sense, the needs assessment is independent of what you have. But at the same time, if I know that there are some constraints there, there's no future in putting forth all these needs that we know can never be met, you know, so I like to temper it with like a political reality at the same time. I mean, I'm the board president, I deal with the same stuff, you know, and I know, I understand.
And the needs assessment will also be driven by the demographics. and
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
income and the education and language.
Right, and that's what my whole thing is trying to make it really specific to the community rather than just this kind of broad brush thing. Because, you know, what had happened for a long time is I saw that a lot of the planners, and this is not to, you know, dismiss anybody at all, but they tended to be retired library directors who retired 15 years ago, who were using these state standards. And I would see, working with the programs that came out, I would just see the same thing, like over and over and over, and I thought, this just isn't how it should be done. You know, it should be a different kind of process altogether, you know, and that's what I'm trying to do. So.
What is our next step?
Well, if it's something you want to consider, what I would propose doing is waiting for the new director to get here. Give her 20 minutes to catch her breath.
I was gonna give her 15.
Yeah, okay.
I was gonna give her 30.
Yeah,
I
okay.
don't know about you.
So I see you're the member she'll like to work with.
Right.
That's okay.
It's impossible
Yeah.
anyway, so.
But I think catch, and then just have an informal meeting first, just to kind of see where she's coming from and things, and then And if everybody's interested to look at something, I would put together a scope of the stuff that, if it were me, that I would look at, and write a proposal for you based on that scope. So. And that's an interactive thing, I mean, I don't just shoot the scope at somebody, it's like, it's, you know, to look at back and forth, like, you agree with it or disagree, and I mean, it did get tailored for every project, so. Well, anyway, so I would propose, you know, it would make some sense to talk after she gets situated and at least knows how to, where her parking space is.
Yeah, all right.
Or isn't,
Or
Yeah,
is it?
they have designated.
you know.